The Boy Who Found Fear at Last. Once upon a time there lived a woman who had one son whom she loved dearly. The little cottage in which they dwelt was built on the outskirts of a forest, and as it had no neighbors, the place was very lonely, and the boy was kept at home by his mother to bear her company. They were sitting together on a winter's evening when a storm suddenly sprang up, and the wind blew the door open. The woman started and shivered and glanced over her shoulder as if she half expected to see some horrible thing behind her. "Go and shut the door," she said hastily to her son. I feel frightened." "Frightened," said the boy. "What does it feel like to be frightened?" "Well, just frightened," answered his mother. "A fear of something, you hardly know what, takes hold of us." "It must be very odd to feel like that," replied the boy. "I will go through the world and seek fear till I find it." And the next morning, before his mother was even out of bed, he had left the forest behind him. After walking for some hours, he reached a mountain which he began to climb. Near the top, in a wild and rocky spot, he came upon a band of fierce robbers sitting around a fire. The boy, who was cold and tired, was delighted to see the bright flames, so he went up to them and said, "Good greeting to you, sirs," and he wiggled himself from between the men, till his feet almost touched the fire. The robbers stopped drinking and eyed him curiously, and at last the captain spoke. "No caravan of armed men would dare to come here. Even the very birds shun our camp. And who are you to venture in so boldly?" "Oh, I have left my mother's house in search of fear. Perhaps you can show it to me." "Fear is wherever we are," answered the captain. "But where?" answered the boy, looking round. "I see nothing." "Take this pot and some flour and butter and sugar over to the churchyard which lies down there, and bake us a cake for supper," replied the robber. And the boy, who was by this time quite warm, jumped up cheerfully, and swinging the pot over his arm, he ran down the hill. When he got to the churchyard, he collected some sticks and made a fire. Then he filled the pot with water from a little stream close by, and mixing the flour and butter and sugar together, he sets the cake on to cook. It was not long before it grew crisp and brown, and then the boy lifted it from the pot and placed it on a stone, while he put out the fire. At that moment a hand stretched from the grave, and a voice said, "Is that cake for me?" "Do you think I'm going to give the dead food of the living?" replied the boy with a laugh, and giving the hand a tap with a spoon and picking up the cake, he went up the mountainside, whistling merrily. "Have you found fear yet?" asked the robbers as he held out the cake to the captain. "No. Was it there?" answered the boy. "I saw nothing but a hand which came from a grave, and belonged to someone who wanted my cake. But I just rapped his fingers with my spoon, and said it was not for him, and then the hand vanished. Oh, how nice this fire is!" He flung himself on his knees before it, and so did not notice the glances of surprise cast by the robbers at each other. "There's another chance for you," he said at length. "The other side of the mountain lies a deep pool. Go to that. Perhaps you will meet fear on the way." "I hope so indeed," answered the boy, and he set out at once. He soon beheld the waters of the pool gleaming in the moonlight, and as he drew near he saw a tall swing standing just over it. Under the swing a child was seated, weeping bitterly. "That is a strange place for a swing," thought the boy, "but I wonder what he is crying about." And he was hurrying on towards the child, when a maiden ran up and spoke to him. "I want you to lift my little brother off the swing," she cried. "But it's so high for me and I cannot reach it. If you'll get closer to the edge of the pool and let me mount on your shoulders, I think I can reach him." "Willingly," replied the boy, and in an instant the girl had climbed to his shoulders. But instead of lifting the child from the swing, as she could have easily done, she pressed her feet so firmly on either side of the youth's neck that he felt that in another minute he would be choked, or else fall into the water beneath him. So, gathering up all his strength, he gave a mighty heave and threw the girl backwards. As she touched the ground, a bracelet fell from her arm, and this the youth picked up. "I may as well keep this as a remembrance from all the queer things that have been happening to me since I left home," said to himself, and turning to look for the child, he saw that both it and the swing had vanished, and that the first streaks of dawn were in the sky. With the bracelet on his arm, the youth started for a little town which was situated on the plain on the further side of the mountain, and, as hungry and thirsty, he entered the principal street. A man stopped him. "Where did you get that bracelet?" the man asked. "It belongs to me." "No, it is mine," answered the boy. "It is not. Give it to me at once, or it will be the worse for you," cried the man. "Let us go before a judge and tell him our stories," said the boy. "If he decides in your favor, you shall have it. If in mine, I will keep it." To this the man agreed, and the two went together to the great hall, which the caddy was administering judgment. He listened very carefully to what each had to say. Then he pronounced his verdict. Neither of the two claimants had proved his right to the bracelet, therefore it must remain in possession of the judge till its fellow was brought before him. When they heard this, the man and the boy looked at each other, and their eyes said, "Where are we to go to find the other one?" But as they knew there was no use of disputing the decision, they bowed low and left the hall of audience. Wandering he knew not where, the youth found himself on a seashore, and at a little distance was a ship which had struck on a hidden rock and was sinking rapidly. While on the deck the crew were gathered, with faces white as death, and shrieking and wringing their hands. "Have you met with fear?" shouted the boy, and the answer came above the noise of the waves. "Oh, help us! Help us! We're drowning!" Then the boy flung off his clothes and swam to the ship, where many hands were held out to draw him on board. "The ship was tossed hither and there and will soon be sucked down," cried the crew again. "Death is very near. We are frightened." "Give me a rope," said the boy in reply, and he took it and made it safe round his body at one end, and to the mast at the other, and he sprang out into the sea. Down he went, down, 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 till at last his feet touched the bottom, and he stood up and looked about him. There, sure enough, a sea-maiden with a wicked face was tugging hard at the chain which she had fastened to the ship with a grappling iron, and was dragging it bit by bit beneath the waves. Seizing her in both his hands, he forced her to stop the chain, and the ship above remaining steady, the sailors were able gently to float her off the rock. Then, taking a rusty knife from a heap of seaweed at his feet, he cut the rope round his waist, and fastened the sea-maiden firmly to the stone, so that she could not do any more mischief. And bidding her farewell, he swam back to the beach, where his clothes were still lying. The youth quickly dressed himself and walked on till he came to a beautiful shady garden filled with flowers, and with a clear little stream running through. The day was hot, and he was tired, so he entered the gate and seated himself under a clump of bushes covered with sweet-smelling red blossoms, and it was not long before he fell asleep. Suddenly a rush of wings and a cool breeze awakened him, and raising his head cautiously, he saw 3 doves plunging into a stream. They splashed about joyfully and shook themselves, then dived to the bottom of a deep pool. When they disappeared again, there were no longer 3 doves, but 3 beautiful damsels, bearing between them a table made of mother-of-pearl. On this they placed drinking cups fastened from pink and green shells, and one of the maidens filled a cup from a crystal goblet, and while raising it to her mouth, when her sister stopped her. "To whose health do you drink?" she asked. "To the youth who prepared the cake, and rubbed my hand with the spoon when I stretched out of the earth," answered the maiden. "I was never afraid of other men were. But to whose health do you drink?" "To the youth whose soldiers I climbed at the edge of the pool, and threw me off with such a jerk that I lay unconscious for hours," replied the second. "But you, my sister," added she, turning to the third girl, "to whom do you drink?" down in the sea, I took hold of a ship and shook it and pulled it till we soon would have been lost," she said. And as she spoke, she looked quite different from what she had done with the chain in her hand, seeking to work mischief. "But a youth came and freed the ship and bound me to a rock. To his health I drink." And they all three lifted their cups and drank silently. As they put their cups down, the youth appeared before them. "Here I am, the youth whose help you have drunk. Now give me the bracelet that matches the jeweled band which the surety fell from the arms of one of you. The man tried to take it from me, but I would not let him have it, and he dragged me before the caddy, who kept my bracelet till I could show him its fellow. And I've been wandering hither and there in search for it, and that is how I've found myself in such strange places." "Come with us, then," said the maidens, and they led him down a passage into a hall, out of which opened many chambers, each one with greater splendor than the last. From herself, heaped up with gold and jewels, eldest sister took a bracelet, which in every way was exactly like the one in which the judge was keeping, and fastened it to the youth's arm. "Go at once and show this to the caddy," she said, "and he will give you the fellow to it." "I shall never forget you," answered the youth. "It may be long before we meet again, for I shall never rest until I have found fear." Then he went on his way and won the bracelet from the caddy. After this, he set forth again in his quest for fear. On and on walked the youth, but fear never crossed his path, and one day he entered a large town where the streets and squares were full of people, and he could hardly pass between them. "Why are all these crowds gathered together?" he asked of a man who stood next to him. "The ruler of the country is dead," was his reply, "and he had no children, and is needing to choose successor. Therefore each morning one of the sacred pigeons is set loose in the tower yonder, and on whomever the bird shall perch, that man is our king. In a few minutes the pigeon will fly. Wait and see what happens." Every eye was fixed on the tall tower which stood in the center of the chief square, and the moment that the sun was seen to stand straight over it, the door was opened, and a beautiful pigeon, gleaming with pink and gray, blue and green, came rushing through the air. Onward it flew, onward and onward, till at length it rested on the head of the boy. Then a great shout arose, "The king! The king!" But as he listened to the cries, a vision, swifter than lightning, flashed across his brain. He saw himself seated on a throne, spending his life trying, and never succeeding to make poor people rich and miserable people happy, and bad people good, and never doing anything he wished to do, not even marry the girl he loved. "No! No!" he shrieked, hiding his face in his hands. But the crowd who heard him thought he was overcome by the grandeur that awaited him, and paid no heed. "Well, to make quite sure, let more pigeons fly," said they, and each pigeon followed where the first had led. The cries rose louder than ever, "The king! The king!" And as the young man heard, a cold shiver that he knew not the meaning of ran through him. "This is the fear whom you have sought so long," answered a voice, which seemed to reach his ears alone. And the youth bowed his head as a vision once more flashed before his eyes, and he accepted his doom and made ready to pass his life with fear beside him.